Who has the best fleet to drive for? That's what we're talking about today. How does your fleet get nominated? And why would you, as a driver, want to nominate the fleet? And also, hey, carriers, why should you be included or encouraging your drivers to include yourself in the best fleets to drive for? That's what we're talking about today on the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast. Next.
Welcome to the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast.
Mark and Jane, Carrier's Edge.
Hey!
Welcome to the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast.
No, thanks for having us.
Wow.
Well, especially now that head office got moved to the west coast of Canada instead of Markham, Ontario. Damn.
We haven't, Carrier's Edge hasn't really moved, just us.
Well, the head
Just
office
the two
has
of
moved.
us. Yes, I guess.
Okay. So you have
Brains of the operation.
the brains of the operations went west, and the employees all remained here in Ontario.
Well, employees are actually spread out across the country already. So we had, I think, 4 or 5 employees in Vancouver, and we go all the way across the country. We've got people on the East Coast as well. So it really didn't matter where we were. We could go anywhere, and we decided that we liked Vancouver Island, and so we moved here, and it's fabulous.
Awesome. Yeah. As we're
We have the only problem is time zones.
Mm-hmm.
So we have because we have everybody like on the east and the west. You know, you have to try and figure out a block of time that everybody can have a meeting. That's the worst part of it. So, and I also I realize that Central or Eastern time is the center of the universe.
of course.
Everybody, we're all on Eastern time, whether we like it or not.
Yep.
No
Well,
matter
that's
where
because
we live.
and a lot of that's because Chris and I are here. We are the center of the universe.
Of course.
Yeah, TRIP, the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast.
Exactly.
Eastern time zone.
Exactly.
Center
Yep.
of the known universe.
Yep. Exactly.
Hey, we are here today to discuss stumble.
Do you remember?
No.
That thing.
What is it? The 16th
thing.
year of
Best fleets to drive for.
Best Fleets to Drive
Six-
for.
15 years.
We are coming up on the 16th year of Best Fleets to Drive for. That's awesome,
Wow.
you guys. Congrats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been that long, eh?
Well, I do remember talking, I think it was to Jane, saying that it was very stressful the first year as you guys were kicking it off, trying to get all the pieces together on your first go round. I'm sure it's much better now. It's still stressful, I'm sure, but you know.
Different stresses. Yeah, but we also have staffs that, look, when we started Best Fleets to Drive For, it was mostly Mark. It was all on Mark's shoulders. So he was doing all the interviews, doing all the scoring, doing everything because I was on the Carrier's Edge side and I was writing courses at the time. So we were building our library and, 2008. And so for the first few years, he was basically trying to get anybody to help him, like anybody. It was sort of, are you on the street? Can you, have a phone call? Come and do this. It was, and then I got more involved. So he had some help.
And now we're here talking about it, and both Mark and Jane are here. But let me ask Mark, why would somebody want to apply to be considered as one of the best fleets to drive for?
Well, there are a few reasons. First, they have to be nominated by one of their drivers or owner-operators working with them. So getting that nomination...
Sorry, you got to repeat that again. So the first step is...
You have to get nominated. Yes.
By one of your own.
Yes.
By a driver or an owner-operator.
Yeah, there has to be somebody driving for that fleet who says, yeah, this is a great place to be. And it only takes one. So it's not that high of a bar, but it is a start where as a company, you've got some people that are willing to step up and say, yeah, this is a great place to be. So it's a little bit of a validation right away that they're doing some of the right things. As to why they want to participate, well, there's a couple of reasons. And the biggest one is something that people don't often catch right in the beginning, and that is the benchmarking side of it. Being part of the Best Fleets program, they go through a lot, and we'll probably talk about it here, what the process is later, but it's a lot of evaluation of all the different things that they're doing for their drivers, and a lot of questions that many of them have never even thought to ask themselves. So going through that process forces them to look at what they're doing. It also requires them to work across all departments of the company, because there's no one person who can do everything, unless it's a very tiny company and one person is doing everything. But in most fleets, they need all departments working together to get the information collected, to get through the process, get it all done in a fairly short time frame. And that is a really good collaborative opportunity. So it helps them to learn how to work together. Going through this assessment process and looking at the way it's scored at the end gives them a really good assessment of how they're doing compared to their peers in a lot of different areas. So we have fleets that go through it year after year purely for the benchmarking side of it, because it really gives them a sense of what's happening in the industry, where things are going, what the trends are, and what they should be doing, because it also gives them a lot of ideas. If they're not doing well in a particular area, they can see what other fleets are doing that is working well, and that becomes a foundation for growth for them. And then finally, if they are able to make it into that winner circle and be named a best fleet, that's quite an achievement. It's a hard process to go through. It's difficult. It gets harder every year for fleets. So the 20 that get named as best fleets every year really are stepping it up. And that becomes a great marketing opportunity for them as well.
And Jane, I saw you making notes.
I
add
always make
something?
notes.
Well, no, I'm just wondering, did you want to add to what Mark had said?
Yeah,
Or
I think the one thing that I want to say is that, what's that?
Or correct.
Correct.
Yeah,
But you
there's
talk.
always
One woman. One woman.
The one
one inch.
thing that I would say to people is that when you are part of the best fleets to drive for, there's always this, okay, I'm doing this to be one of the top 20. And if you don't make it to the top 20, if you're a fleet to watch, which is kind of the 5 fleets that we see is going to be on the top 20, or the ones that are kind of like, right there. Fleets get really deflated and think that, oh, I'm not good enough, or, this isn't worth it, that kind of thing. But most fleets don't make it on their first try, because it's a continuous improvement exercise. And like Mark said, it's like sometimes the fleets that haven't considered some of these questions, so they don't have an answer for it. And if you don't have an answer and you're not doing anything for a particular program, so like, how are you promoting personal safety, or what are you doing about training, or what are you doing about, turnover, that kind of thing, you have an opportunity to learn from your questions this year and apply it to next year. So what the top 20 who are consistently top 20 do is they go through the previous year and they do a consultation with us. They talk to each other, like they will get a group together and go over it, decide on what they're going to do for the next year. And then when they come into the program the next year, that all of that information is there to help them be better. So we have seen companies go from last year's overall winner, CAT, went from being in the program for 4 years and kind of doing not bad to last year just because they had done that process. They had gone through and said, okay, what are we doing? What can we do? This is what we're going to do to make this better. And they frankly freaked me out, because I did their interview and I was like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
What are you taking?
Well, you
done such a great job.
Yeah. You talk about the top 20. How how many fleets are in this process? How many are you up to now after 16 years? How many motor carriers are getting in on this program?
Well, it changes every year. Last year, we had 165 fleets that were nominated by their drivers.
Wow.
And so then we go through this process of collecting all of the information. We do an interview with them. They've got to get driver surveys completed. It's quite a grind right at the busiest time of year coming into Christmas. And the people who finish all of that, get everything in on time, move into the finals. So that they become finalists. And that's the group of fleets where we have all the information that we can score them. And last year, well, for the last few years, we've been in the low 90s in terms of finalists. So there are 90, 93, 95 fleets that are making it through that process and getting everything in. And
a lot of scoring.
Yeah. And then from there, we have the top 20, the fleets to watch that Jane mentioned that are on their way to making it, we think. And then a couple of years ago, we also introduced a Hall of Fame for the fleets that have had this repeat cycle of always being in the top 20 and regularly winning the overall awards. We moved them up into a new level of Hall of Fame. So we've got, I think, 10 last year that were in the Hall of Fame. So so there is a good amount of opportunity for fleets to do well and to make it. It isn't just the same people over and over. There are some people that are definitely repeats, but there's a lot of space for fleets to come in and do well and learn from it and get some real recognition.
The Hall of Fame really opened that up because the people who are in the Hall of Fame, sometimes they've been on the list for, I think Grand Island is the oldest. Are they up to 14 or 13?
Yeah, it was
years
last
in a row.
year was 12 years, and they're nominated again this year. So they're continuing. So yeah, what we found is that fleets get to a certain level, and it's an observation that Jane made a few years ago, that once fleets get to a particular level, they tend to stay there because that just becomes the way they operate as a business. Things that they're doing for their drivers in operations, in HR, professional development, that's just how they are. So they're just going to keep staying at the top of that list over and over again. And they're sort of claiming that spot, and they earn it. They definitely deserve that spot. But the problem is it doesn't leave room for anybody else to come in there. So moving them into that Hall of Fame to recognize that higher level of achievement gave us the opportunity to give them the recognition that they deserve, but also free up some spots to get some new blood in there. Because one thing that we absolutely wanted to see is a continuation of new people coming into the program. We don't just want to be recognizing the same 15 people over and over and over again with, 4 rotating newbies. That's not enough. So we wanted to mix it up, and the Hall of Fame really opened up that ability. And we've got a lot of new people that, quite frankly, we're on the cusp. Sometimes people didn't make the top 20. They missed out by a 0.5 percentage point. And can we really say that they're not good fleets to work for? It just didn't make any sense. So this way we've got more space to say, you might have been a 0.5 percentage point below somebody else, but you're still doing all of these good things. You still belong there. So it's been a really, really exciting process over the past couple of years, getting all of that happening.
I mean, that's exciting. What I didn't understand until just now was the part of the scoring process. So what I heard you say, a big reason for a fleet who, I'll say it in my words, not in yours, gives a shit for the drivers and wants to step it up, they get a benchmark of what some of their peers are doing, the best practices, if you want, of what their peers are doing. So even as you said, the first year, they may not do as good as they wanted, but they get the report back, and now they've got some great ideas that they can implement for the years to come. Is that kind of what I heard?
That's exactly it. Yeah. We produce a results book where we break out all of the questions that we scored, what the different scoring point values are for each of those, and what each of the winning fleets is doing, what their scores are in those different categories. So any fleet, whether they participate or not, can look at that results book and see what the winners are doing, why they are making it onto that list, and compare their own performance against that. Even if you've never participated before, you can look at that book and see what people are doing and get some ideas.
Right.
And those
the only
books
way-
are all available on the website for every year. So you can even see how we change the scoring, because we change the scoring every year to match what fleets are doing. So as everybody adopts the same technology or starts doing kind of the same type of practice, then we change the scoring so that the people who are doing it are more exceptional are starting to get. Like, you don't want to score everybody on an ELD now. Like, we used to score that was like great technology before there were the mandates. So people would get scored higher. We don't score that at all anymore because everybody has to have one. So those books all outline what we scored, how everybody scored, who the fleets were. And I think that the fleets who are in the top 20 are using that book as a guideline.
Cool.
Now,
Yeah.
is the book available to everybody, or do you have to apply?
No, it's the book. It's on
And the link will
website.
be in the show notes down below.
Yeah. Down below.
If you go to fleetstodrivefor.com and I think click on results, then you can see it by year.
We have all of the years. We also have hard copies that we give out at shows. So if you come across our booth at any event, there will be copies of the current book there. And it looks like this.
And
Cool.
the next show that you're going to be at, you said I know it's coming October, November.
Oh, there's a bunch of different
we've got
ones.
a
You're
bunch.
going to MCE.
Yeah, I'm going to be at the ATA Management Conference in Austin in October, and we'll have those books there. And while I'm there, you're at DeliveryCon in Las Vegas.
Which will, that's it's in Vegas, and it's more of a final mile show. So we've never been there. So that'd be very exciting.
And then we're both going to be at the Fleet Safety Council annual conference. And then we also have some people that will be at the Ontario Trucking Association annual conference as well.
Cool.
Busy.
Geez.
Yes.
Hey, John, are you going to the OTA? Because I was going to say we could volunteer to represent Carrier's Edge at the OTA.
could.
I can't afford to go to that show.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if they'd let us in now that we're no longer part of the insurance industry.
Yeah. The best fleets to drive for. So again, getting back to the topic, you need to apply. Are applications open yet? This is, what day are we? September the 8th is the day of recording. Are applications open yet?
Nominations are open from, they started the day after Labor Day and they go to Halloween. So you can go to bestfleetstodrivefor.com and nominate your fleet. So if you just scroll down a little bit on the whole nomination form is there, but you've got to be a driver or an owner operator. You can't be part of the safety department and apply. It's not really an application. It's a nomination.
Right.
You have to fill it out, say what's great about your fleet, why you think they're a good one.
And of course, the more drivers that did that for one company, that's got to influence you guys a little, at least.
It doesn't make that much of a difference on the nomination. We only need one to get started. But the final stage of the data collection is driver surveys. And there we want to see as many as possible. So there will be a target number that the fleet has to get submitted based on the size of the fleet. But more is better for sure. We've had some fleets where nearly all of their drivers do a survey. That definitely tells us something about the fleet.
Yeah.
We may only ask for half of the drivers to do something, but if they go above and beyond, that gives us much better information.
Well, we find out if the fleet is really annoying drivers or if it's really supporting drivers. If you get a good, 80% participation, that's either a really good thing or a really bad thing.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I was going to say, there's nothing stopping a motor carrier from going on the Best Fleets website, looking at the book, finding out what it takes to get into that Best Fleets, and then act on that. Put stuff into play, and then share with their drivers that, hey, we want to be in that Best Fleets to drive for, but we need to be nominated. So if you feel we're headed in the right direction, here's the website. This is something you could share through a newsletter or something like that with your staff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's absolutely what happens for nominations is that fleets will post something and say, hey, nominations are open. If you're feeling up to it, here's the place to go. And we definitely see fleets that will get those books and dig through them and spend a year prepping before they get involved. We've seen that. There's 2 or 3 that I can think of over the past 5 years or so that did that. And that really helps because then they know what they're getting into. They are ready for it. We also see people that get nominated, start the process, look at the questionnaire, and maybe do about a third of it and realize they're not going to be able to do it. They come back next year and finish it. That's fine. We store all of that information. They can pick up where they left off last time and just finish it from there. So it is a multi-year kind of project. It's one of these things that's sort of an ongoing activity for fleets that are involved in it and really care about improving. Going back to what Jane was saying about how it takes a few years, I can remember Central Oregon Truck Company had probably 2 or 3 years before they got on the top 20. Then once they got there, once they figured it out, they've been there ever since, and now they're in the Hall of Fame. So you can definitely make some really good progress and really get your fleet in good shape going through that.
Yeah. And I think if you talk to any of them, and we have a good number of Canadians as well who've been on the list for multiple years. Well, we have, how many are in the Hall of Fame? Trans Pros in the Hall of Fame?
And Bison.
And Bison.
Yeah.
If you talk to those fleets, they'll say that, it's kind of part of a process that they are constantly thinking about it. And it's, the repetition is really, really good. But it's like this kind of, you have this best fleets way of looking at things. Like you start to develop this kind of, can I put that in my best fleets questionnaire? So fleets start to do that. They actually start, planning around what they can put in this questionnaire. And which I find it's a really good feeling because you know that you're really helping them with that getting better, always getting better process.
Well, it sounds like a great opportunity on how to improve your company culture in itself.
Oh yeah.
So it's got to be cool. What would be, say, the top 3 benefits of being in the top 20? What could I use that for?
Well, certainly it's a recruiting tool, and it is something for drivers. But it's also a retention tool. One of the things that we found is that fleets that make that top 20 have a real sense of pride within the organization, and their staff really feel strong about that, that recognition. And the drivers really feel like they're part of it too, because they know they've had to do a survey and contribute their feedback. So it really builds a sense of community within the organization. So it helps retention. It definitely helps with safety and all of sort of the elements that go around that, because we definitely look at that. That's part of it. But all of the things that are elements of a great culture are all the things that you guys recommend people doing to improve their safety numbers. So all of that helps. And then as a recruiting tool, it's great advertising that you're getting that third-party recognition. And we definitely see people using it as part of their sales. Certainly the larger companies, any public companies, we've seen them listing that in their notes to investors and things. It's something that really validates a lot of the efforts that the company is making.
I was going to say, it's a great sales tool. Because, we in the industry understand lower turnover equals lower crashes. Lower turnover equals more on-time deliveries and other benefits to our customers, our receivers and our shippers. Therefore, it's a huge tool, I think, for, as you said, retention, driver culture or company culture, and sales.
And I think one of the cool things about Best Fleets to Drive For is that when you talk about culture and talk about lower retention lower retention, or keeping your drivers longer and having them more as part of a team, when you go through the process, you start to see all of the elements that actually go into a great culture. You don't have to have the same answers. There's no real correct answers to any of the questions, but you can definitely see when fleets haven't considered something or don't care about something or don't see it as a priority, and when they do. And when they do, the answers are very good. And they're very, like, sometimes they surprise us. Like, we've often copied things in our own company from Best Fleets to Drive.
Sure, why not? Why not? Well, I was going to say, one of the big things that I'm hearing about this is engagement alone. I'm going to have good driver engagement. And I think that's what a lot of companies struggle with right now. If you have a high turnover rate, well, then that's indicative of your culture, of what you've got going on. If I want to change that culture, I need to engage with my people. I need to be more cognizant of behaviors that are going on. And this sounds like an excellent program to learn how I can engage with my drivers better. How are other companies doing that out there? You've got all this data from all these years and all these motor carriers that have made major changes. And to be able to look at that and go, wow, I could make a change. I could improve my retention, lower my turnover, improve my safety scores because I'm going to have better engagement with my drivers. This is a no-brainer, guys. How come we don't have 500 companies in this program wanting to get in?
Yeah.
Oh, we lost.
We lost your audio. Jane, we lost your audio there. Turned it off. Yeah.
Now we hear you.
We're having technical difficulties with Jane.
Yeah, no.
What the?
Turn it off.
I'm having technical difficulties. Why is all my cameras jumping all of a sudden? Well,
there we go.
Am I back?
Yes,
You're back.
you're back. Well,
Okay.
sorry, Mark. Mark, through the chat, emailed me and said, "Can I turn Jane off?"
You didn't even listen to him. Oh my God.
All right. For the listeners and viewers, by the way, Mark and Jane are husband and wife. So,
Yes.
it is. And
So we
Mark
scrap
didn't
like this
do
all
that.
the time.
Oh yeah, that was just the best behavior actually.
Yeah.
That was whatever in separate rooms.
But all right, we're nearing the end. But before we go, we got a couple of things. First of all, did we hit all the topics for best fleets to drive for?
I think we hit the main ones. We could talk about that for another 3 hours, but we're in good shape here.
Okay. Let's wind up by saying carrier's edge. Let's do a short, what the heck is carrier's edge and why would somebody give a hoot? I already swore once. I'm not going to swear.
Okay. Now you're on your best behavior.
I'll be honest with you. I'm going to cut in here. The number of customers that I meet, and when they don't know who Carrier's Edge is, I look at them and go, "Are you living under a rock?"
Excellent.
Good. I like that.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Carrier's Edge, Mark? You do it better than I do. I get in the weeds.
Well,
Yeah,
Mark
carrier's
does everything better than Jane is what he tells me.
You're going to get me killed here.
He tells me.
You're going to get me canceled. Yeah.
I'm not going to bring him on ever again.
That's why he asked me to come
Here. Yeah.
So you can throw me.
I asked you to come on to cause marital strife. Go ahead. Carrier's Edge, Mark.
Yeah. Carrier's Edge is online safety training for drivers. So for fleets that want to be training their drivers, which should be every fleet, this is a way for them to do that without having to drag people off the road or bring them in on weekends and basically waste people's time. So we are like a Netflix of safety training. You get a library of safety and compliance and best practices courses for drivers and more content for management as well. And it's all in a subscription, so people can decide how they want to use it. They can basically run as much training as they want for their drivers. And drivers never need to be inconvenienced. They can do it on a mobile device. They can do it on the road. They can do it at home, whatever works for them. And so we've been doing that for, I'm not even going to say how long because it makes me feel super old to say how long we've been doing it. But we've got, I think we're over 200 titles in the library right now.
Nice.
So Yeah, Jane and her content team have been cranking out stuff in all kinds of different areas, getting to be more specialized as well. So not just basic things, but including things specifically for tankers, specifically for car haulers, getting into more segments like that, flatbed, reefer people. So we're starting to really get a lot of nice content there for drivers.
I think we're also kind of doing a little bit more for um, so we that are not strictly driver safeties. We have
Yeah.
emotional intelligence, mental health. We're going to be coming out with a manual and materials handling course in a little while. We're finishing up our third auto hauler specific course. So it's like we're running the gamut here.
Well, and
Yeah, I think that's
and
important.
multilingual.
Multilingual, yeah. We now actually have in-house translation, so we're getting even more French content out there and Spanish content in the US. But I think it's important to highlight that we've got a lot of content that helps drivers out when the truck isn't moving. So we've got the defensive
Yes.
driving, distracted driving, those kind of things. But one of the things that Jane's team has done really well is to look at all of the things that a driver deals with during the day. So the trip planning, the inspections, the loading, all of the paperwork stuff, the mental health, the personal safety when they're parked at a truck stop overnight, like all of that kind of stuff that people sometimes don't really think about. In the past, when you're trying to drag people in and get training done on a Saturday for a half day, you cram in as much as you can and you only cover basically the stuff you absolutely have to get to. So there's a lot of these other subjects that really kind of get overlooked, or you hope people pick it up on the road or something. But now that it's moved online and you're not having to give up your time, you're not inconveniencing people with it, you can cover a lot more of those areas and really build a much more efficient, much more proactive and engaged driver. So it very much flows out of what we're talking about with the Best Fleets program, that is about building a workplace culture where everybody has the tools to do the job well and can perform at their best.
Well, the one thing that you didn't mention that I think Carrier's Edge does really well is the back end, the part that the safety manager or the trucking company owner looks at and how that whole thing works. So I'll throw that one in there because I think you've done a really good job on that part of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yes,
Yeah.
the learning management system is it's Mark's branch. I'm the content and he's the LMS. So
Oh.
we've
I didn't
developed
mean
that.
to compliment Mark, but
I'm all going to what way going to drama bone.
I was going to say go ahead, finish her.
You go ahead.
I was going to say from a risk evaluation process, with what I specialize in and going out to see clients, I really love it when they tell me, oh yes, we're using Carrier's Edge for our training, for our orientation and whatnot. And I don't even bother to look. I don't even want to see certificates anymore because I know how the system performs, how it works, how it captures all the information. All I ask them to tell me is, what training programs are you utilizing within your orientation program? Which ones are you using? And I'm expecting them to rhyme off a whole bunch that's going to tell me. But if they tell me they're only doing 2, then I'm going, okay, you're not going far enough. But I love it when they tell me. And then they go, do you want to see it? I said, nope, I know it. I know it inside and out. And I'm very happy with how it works. And as long as you say Carrier's Edge and I've got half a dozen modules for my training program, I'm happy. You're on the right path.
Beautiful.
Oh, we should get you. I need to talk to you about the modules that you actually want to see that you recommend. So we can.
There you go.
Yeah, we're thinking about putting in pre-populated packages for people.
Oh, excellent.
there you
Perfect.
go.
Yeah, we're starting to do more of that consulting with them to help them get
Yep.
that up and running.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because I think Chris and I see a lot of this. We try to help clients help themselves more. It's one thing to go out and offer recommendations. You need to do this. You need to do this. You need to do this. They go, yeah. Okay, I'll work on that. You walk away and they don't. And it's gotten to a point now where what Chris and I do, we need to be more mentors and help them and guide them on getting started and getting into the program. So having something like that, you're talking about a pre-made module that says, hey, if you're going to hire this type of driver for this type of thing, here's these 8 modules that you need to do right away. And So I'm going to add this in real quick because I think this is exciting and this is something you guys could look at as well. I was out to see a client yesterday and we were talking about really elevating their program with regards to team leaders, driver ambassadors within their program. They've got 300 plus drivers. And I said, what would really be cool is if you had 10 drivers that would be ambassadors for your company. They have completed specific modules within Carrier's Edge and are proud to have completed them to help encourage other drivers to volunteer to complete training programs. Don't wait till you're told you have to do it. If you want to be in this elite group of drivers, which goes right in line with best fleets to drive for here, you want to be part of this, you need to say, hey, I want more training. I want more training. I want to learn more. I want to be at the top of my class.
Oh, I like that idea a lot.
Like the idea.
Yeah, we could do that. Not a problem.
There you go. I think that's a great place to wrap it up. So we talked about best fleets to drive for in its 16th year, which I think is a hell of an accomplishment.
That's older than I am.
I know.
And we threw a
You'll
plug
catch
in
up.
for Carrier's Edge as well. I think that's
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Mark
Thanks.
and Jane of Carrier's Edge, thanks so much for coming on the show. Oh, that was great. Thanks, Mark and Jane from Carrier's Edge. If you haven't checked out Carrier's Edge, please, there is a link down below. But for the best fleets to drive for drivers, I would encourage you to nominate your fleet if you truly believe that you are working at the best fleet to drive for. And of course, carriers, you'll learn a lot through the exercise of completing the application. So I would encourage you to do that. All the information and the links are in the show notes down below. Thanks again for joining us this week on the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast. John and I appreciate you.